This is the concert calendar.
Wednesday, August 22nd, Daniel Champagne, presented with Snazzy Productions, comes to Michael's on Main for an ages under 21 with parent-seated show. David Byrne comes to the Bill Graham Civic in San Francisco. Friday, August 24th, it's the Carolyn Seals combo with Miss Lonely Hearts at Moe's Alley for ages 21 and up. Starship, featuring Mickey Thomas, comes to the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. Painted Mandolin, have an ages 21 and up dance, featuring a high-energy acoustic journey through Jerry Garcia's repertoire at Michael's on Main. The Throwbacker at the Catalyst for ages 21 and up.
For information on these and other upcoming events, visit kzsc.org and click on the Calendar tab. This has been the concert calendar only here on community-supported radio, KZSC Santa Cruz. I'm Danny Croft.
Hello, you are listening to KZSE Santa Cruz. I am Dan Wu. Behind my voice is the track 1978 by the wonderful group Do Make Say Think. Couple announcements before we get into the show. Because I'm learning when I go to podcast these on KZSE's Facebook group and YouTube and SoundCloud and all of that stuff is it really sounds horrible if you log on to a podcast and they have 6 minutes of announcements before they get to the topic of the show. So, new experiment here. This will be cut out of the podcast. Or not if I need to keep them. Tune in Mondays from 1 to 3 p.m. for Cruise Control. DJ Lizard brings you tracks to turn up and tune everything else out. Only on 88.1 FM, KZSE Santa Cruz. Because that would be really irrelevant in a podcast a week from now. But it's an awesome show, so you should listen to it today after this show. KZSE's Voces Criticas, or Critical Voices, offers a fresh take on what's happening in the world today with interviews and critical commentaries about global affairs that seek to challenge the status quo. Listen to Voces Criticas, Critical Voices, every Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on KZSE 88.1 FM and online at kzse.org. Also another show that's on top of the podcasting game. They are all over the internets. The show highlights voices that are too often left out of mainstream conversations. Listen and be inspired. Thursdays at 5:30 p.m. And if you are an artist living in Santa Cruz County, Art of Santa Cruz, a nonprofit arts organization in the Capitola Mall, has display space open for local artists and craft people. If you would like to display your work in a gallery setting, or if you're interested in becoming a supporter of the Regional Artists Association, contact Art of Santa Cruz at 831-515-7390, or you can visit their website, regionalartisansassociation.org. And today's guest is Brent Adams, currently of the Warming Center, also involved in some other activities in his life. And we will be talking about homelessness, housing, solutions, and problems here for the next hour. The number to get involved in the show is 831-459-4036. And you can also text that number, but it is always the best to have actual diversity of sonic voices on the air, not just me reading your text messages. Also, the disclaimer about the text messages: if you do that, do not write in shorthand, or I will not be able to read your message, get your message across, and not sound like an idiot. So we'll be back in a moment with Brent Adams. This is Unquestionable on KZSE Santa Cruz. Stay tuned. We're just gonna enjoy this song for just a minute because it's foggy out and it's a great song. And welcome to KZSE Santa Cruz and Unquestionable. I am Dan Wu, your host for the next hour. And in the studio with me is local Santa Cruz activist Brent Adams, who works on a project called the Warming Center, which is an offshoot or alternative to other homeless services in the community. The number to get involved in the conversation is 831-459-4036, and you can pose your questions, comments about the conversation, any of that you would like to get on the air. You can also text that number in full sentences, and I will try and get your message across or question to Brent through that format. But first off, how's it going, Brent?
Super good. It's good to be here. Thanks.
Awesome. And just to start off in a little biographical terms, are you from Santa Cruz originally?
Born in Maine, moved the wagons west probably 1969, brought my family out here, and lived in San Jose until high school years, and then came to the only obvious place to live after that.
Okay, you confused me saying you brought your family out here, but you were a small child at that point.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
The wagon train. Donner Pass was difficult, and then we got here. I lived here about 30 years. I'm 53 years old.
Awesome. And you've been, during my conscious days of being involved as a young adult in Santa Cruz, I've seen you around a lot of places. And how long have you been working specifically on the issue of homelessness and housing in Santa Cruz, and how did that work start? If it didn't even start here, when did that become a cause that you were really interested in contributing to?
Yeah. Growing up, the challenge of homelessness was always something that was intriguing, interacting with people who sleep outside. Had my own experiences as a young white American male who could always get work whenever I wanted to, so I played fast and loose and then would go stay at festivals for too long or Burning Man, store my stuff, live out in the woods. And I did that numerous times, lived in a school bus, lived in a tree house until stuff got real. I experienced extreme cold, the hardship of moving my stuff around. And then I started getting older, and the job market and housing is more expensive. And I started, at some point, I think maybe 20 years ago, I experienced my first really cold night sleeping out in the woods and seeing what other people were, what their life was like. Generally, as an activist type person in Santa Cruz, a lot of us self-identify with that. Over the last 20 years, we would attend whatever protest happened to be happening. And so a lot of us got encultured with the homeless issue, the sleeping ban. And after Occupy Santa Cruz, I living with people for a couple of months and seeing what that was really like. And then I got caught up in this bank building takeover and some charges, and that took a lot of my life. And in that time, I decided to investigate West Coast homelessness and what was being done. And I learned way too much about the status quo, the federal government's program that we're stuck in, the larger paradigm from the HUD and Housing First these days. And then what's really being done on the street in 40 cities on the West Coast. So I learned about all of that, picked a program called the Sanctuary Camp, and tried to bring something that we see all over the Northwest into Santa Cruz. There was a lot of support, and then finally an enormous amount of resistance that shut that down. Like a good entrepreneur, we pivoted into how do we take the lowest rung and help people on the street right now. And that was that, sure, there are lots of shelters, but there are still hundreds of people sleeping outside on the very coldest nights. And I knew lots of people who died because of hypothermia. So we started the Warming Center program, and we're in our 4th year, just finished our 4th year.
Okay. There was a lot in there. I feel like I made some notes along the way of things that I want to get back to. Obviously, we have more than an hour worth of stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I always go to the danger of packing all of that into the first 10 minutes. And then I'm like, oh, God, what did I do? I got 46 minutes left.
But
let's go now that we got the quick Cliff Notes version of how you got to this point.
Yeah.
Currently, maybe give a little detail of what the warming center is, and going back to a little bit of the detail of what inspired you to start it, maybe without so many offshoots, just so we don't lose listeners that just came into their car for their lunch break.
Yeah.
If that is you, 831-459-4036 is the number to join into the conversation, as long as it does not endanger your driving. And we're talking with Brent Adams, Santa Cruz resident and homelessness activist, long time from the area, born in Maine. Very similar to me. I was born in New Hampshire, but I've lived here since I was 1, so I definitely consider myself a local at that point.
Yeah.
And also, I want to talk about Occupy Santa Cruz, because you say it as if people know what that is.
Right.
There's a lot of new people to the area that probably don't even know what you're talking about. But yes, your inspiration more specifically for starting the warming center.
Yeah.
And what is the warming center?
I spent 10 years as a street musician, and I got a lot of close contact with people who sleep outside. Activism doesn't normally put you in contact with people, whatever the cause. And so knowing people on the street gave me a real sense of empathy and a sense of urgency in the wintertime. I would have people sleeping in my living room on the extreme cold nights, one person, and after a couple of nights, I say, "You can't. I have, I can't do that. That takes my personal space away." And but the question is, how do we take care of 100 people or anybody? So the warming center was a concept borrowed from many other cities. In fact, we pieced together warming center concepts from all over the country. Often it's United Way, Red Cross, Salvation Army, the counties, things like that, and Catholic charities. So we picked and chose to fit something perfect for Santa Cruz. And we held a year's worth of meetings. And finally, our first year, we opened our doors. And really, it's temperature-based. It's a forecast-based. So we set a threshold. At the beginning, it was like 38 degrees. We had to drop that down to 32 degrees, realizing we'd be open too much for a new program. Right now, we're at about 37 degrees in Santa Cruz is our door trigger. You'd think that's very low, but that'll still have us open in some peak years at 20 nights or so a winter. And then we also add extreme rain events. So in peak years, we could be open as many as 40 days, and we're an all-volunteer program. So when you think about 20 volunteer shifts per night, if we have a 5-night run, we're just using so many people. So what we do is we focus on the temperature forecast 2 days out, and when the temperature drops to below a certain threshold, we activate. We call one of 3 or 4 site locations, usually churches locally. We find out which one is available. Then once we get one locked in, then we put the word out to the volunteer email. We have about 400 people on the list. We'll see 100 people per year. And we print flyers and put the word out that we're going to be open. Today's Monday, so 2 days out we'd be open on Wednesday in this case, right? We don't have a very fast turnaround, so if the weather slams very quickly, we're unable to open, for instance, with a 24-hour turnaround with that type of organization. And so, but that has had us open. We've had as many as 85 people in on a single night. That is huge. There are no locations within Santa Cruz that shelter 185 people. Maybe the Armory in days of the past. But in recent years, the winter shelter has been splitting up 50 and 50. So when we do 85 in a single location, and it was then City Mayor Don Lane who was helping us move chairs back and trying to maximize the space that night. Also, people come receive blankets and hand warmers. So we'll serve 150 people on a very cold night downtown. So that is a lifesaver, and it really helps protect people from hypothermia.
Now, when you say 85 or maybe 100 people at one location, I noticed it's an article from last year, but they listed the Little Red Church, as everyone calls the Calvary Episcopal Church. I'm sure no one would know it even by that name. Everyone knows it as the Little Red Church on Cedar, between Cedar and Center, right
Calvary
there.
Episcopal.
Yes, Calvary Episcopal. I don't even know how to say that word correctly. That's how religious I am. And also the Quaker Center. up in De La Viega neighborhood.
Yep.
And there was a third church they mentioned, and I'm not seeing it here.
One of your neighbors here, Peace United on 900 High Street.
So when you say 150 people downtown, you mean between maybe those three locations?
Nope.
Are there other locations that you would like to give credit for opening up their spaces currently or in the past?
Well, we are very audacious and very brave. Say we never turn anyone away. We like to say we're scalable to infinity. So we'll try to make space for everyone. So our locations pretty much max out at about 80. Putting 85 was really pushing it for the Calvary Episcopal. Now their fire code says you can have more than 200 people in that room, but that's not laying down with place to turn over and keep personal belongings. The additional 50, 60 people, those are people who came to the door. They were so cold they didn't want to sleep with us, but they did want to come in, get the chill off, get some coffee, some soup. We serve soup all night long. We always have donation blankets and hand warmers, so people are just constantly coming. So at the other location, so we're only open at one location, but this year we'll always have a backup location. So what we do very quickly is the anchor church downtown, the Red Church, is the one kind of our go-to because it's the easy access one. And when we're out in other areas, we have to actually stage a soup and shuttle spot so people don't have to walk out in the rain to get to the Quaker Meeting House or up here at High Street. We just, at the post office, start serving soup at 7 o'clock and coffee, and we have some easy ups for people to stay dry and warm, and the shuttle makes repeated trips up to the locations and back in the morning, so that enables people to us to use multiple locations. So we bounce around. We're not open at the same place each time we're open, so it gets a little confusing. So if people know the Red Church, and if we're not at the Red Church, we'll be at the staging area.
And what kind of ideas do you have when you say scalable to infinity? You said that at a meeting the other day when you were talking about
storage program.
When you were talking about about funding for homelessness related initiatives. You said that the work you do doesn't necessarily need more money. It needs people to support it because it's scalable to infinity. What would you say to people that would say there is a limit to the amount of people that Santa Cruz can support, that there is a lot of the local population of homeless people that became homeless locally. Yeah. And there are people that come here. I don't believe they're shipped here by other communities, as some people try to purport, but that come here because they're not going to probably freeze to death most of the year, and they're not going to die of heat stroke. And those are two things that, being homeless in other areas, those are real risks for people in other areas. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the major reasons that people come here in the first place. However, I do not think, as myself, that there is an infinite potential for people to just come here. It does have, even in just the sense of square mileage. Yeah. You can't have an infinite number of people anywhere. So what do you mean by scalable to infinity as far as your ability to help people that are either homeless because they became homeless locally or that came here for whatever reason? Right.
I appreciate you calling me out for that word infinity. What we really mean to say is you'll see the millions and millions of dollars pouring into Santa Cruz from the HUD and the state and from the county, equating to $1 billion of an local industry finally. And that money is spent on a very small handful of people. For instance, the $100,000 a month encampment that the city is staging up on River Street is only for 50 to 60 people. That equates to $2,000 per person per tent per month. That is a huge inefficiency. We want to say every single dollar spent in this county for homelessness, that every single person experiencing homelessness has the ability to benefit from that single dollar. So if we spend $1 million, so when we build programs, we say scalable is that everybody can enjoy. We're currently starting a new program. We're in our third month of the day and night storage program, where people downtown can store their belongings. We have 150 people in that program already. We don't put a population cap on there. So we're not trying to say we have an infinite capacity as a city or a region. We're saying that we don't put a population cap on our shelters. The current shelters all have population caps. Now, how can that be if you have city or county or federal funding for a shelter that you would cap it at 100 people when we have known to have over 800 people sleeping outside in Santa Cruz? Now, what kind of design is that? Very poor design factor. So what we do is let's have very intelligent design. It's not about the cost of things. It's about how much service you can provide for the smallest amount of funding. And so that's where the Warming Center shows up as something very brilliant in that it's very low cost, and yet the effect is great. And so what our nonprofit does, Warming Center Program is the nonprofit 501c3, is now operating the Warming Center in Santa Cruz and also in Watsonville now. That's United Presbyterian on 2nd Street. It's very helpful out there. We opened last year, and now we're opening the storage program. And also we started something called the Coalition on Homelessness, the Santa Cruz Coalition on Homelessness, to talk about what are the basic needs. So Daniel, when we talk about homelessness, sometimes it's just we say, how do you end homelessness? The very trite, the easy answer is get homes for everybody. But I don't know if you noticed that there are no developments for homelessness. We've been saying that for 6 or 7 years. Money comes into all these agencies and organizations, yet that are proposing ending homelessness through offering housing, but we don't even have developments really yet until this Proposition H comes through for low-income housing. So it's been, what's the term? It just hasn't been an authentic statement. So what we want to do is go straight to the heart of the experience of homelessness. Say, yes, people need housing, but what are the myriad needs? For instance, just basic hygiene, showers, laundry, storing belongings. Where do people have a clean, safe, dignifying place to sleep by any means necessary? You and I, every single night, vote for middle-aged women in walkers and wheelchairs to sleep in doorways downtown because that's the default setting. We would never vote for that, and yet that's going to be happening tonight and tomorrow and the next night. How do we as a community, through some basic awareness, say, actually, we can change that for very low cost based on some things that we're seeing up in the Northwest, in Eugene and Portland. So I don't want to ramble here, but I think that when we say scalable to infinity, we can do way better serving the homeless population for way less than we're already spending.
And what would you say to critics that are not in favor of the type of help you offer to homeless populations because they see it as enabling homeless people and not getting them either the opportunity to have housing or the motivation to have housing?
Homelessness is very complex. Like, you and I could become homeless very easily if we lost our jobs, lost our housing. What would we do? We'd probably do the best we could to store our belongings and try to get shelter for the next few nights. I have a hotline. You're looking at this phone right here. It's the cell phone. It's the only human-answered homelessness hotline in the entire county. I answered it this morning for somebody who needed immediate storage because they're being displaced. They got evicted. So let me answer your question directly. You have mental health, addiction issues, lots of challenges from people from the foster care. Those are the basic extreme conditions. But above that, I believe that there are just as many who are, with dignifying solutions like a place to, we're seeing through the Warming Center and through the storage program, people healing their lives immediately with some basic tools. So right now, enabling, do you mean that giving somebody an easy access place to go poop or a change of clean underwear? Where do we get clean underwear when we sleep on the street? People who don't have access to bathrooms need underwear more than anyone else. Something we don't talk about is almost nobody who sleeps outside is actually wearing underwear because they don't have access to bathrooms. It's a very dark topic. Where are people? How are they getting their laundry done? There's a laundry van with 2 units in it that we laud, but it's never used. So when we talk about enabling, we're talking about providing basic humanistic values, basic dignity. The fact that people don't have a place to access clean water or a place to get a shower when they need it. Yeah, there's some showers out there, but they open at very specific times. They're in areas where people that you and I probably wouldn't want to go. Homelessness is a label that gets stamped on our forehead. When you go to a homeless shelter, you have to self-identify as a homeless person, and that already creates this sort of class designation that's really difficult to ever climb out of. So we're trying to destroy all that and just say we're all people, we have basic needs. Let's enable dignity. Let's enable self-respect. Desperate people behave very desperately. So let's reduce desperation in people's lives.
There's a great quote from the artist Atmosphere that says, when you come to apply for the job, don't tell them that you're homeless. I promise they won't hire you. That's right. And I'm going to leave it at that for the moment. And we're going to be back in about 2 minutes more with Brent Adams of the Warming Center here in Santa Cruz. And the number's 831-459-4036. Even if you disagree with us, as long as you can do it civilly, we love to have calls come in with questions, comments. 831-459-4036. You're listening to KZSE Santa Cruz. This is Unquestionable. I'm Dan Wu. Here's a little Do Make Say Think to liven things up. And we're going to come back and talk about a number of things, but also Measure H, which is on the ballot for November. I'm going to get Brent's take on that. It is a huge housing and homelessness related initiative. We'll be back. KZSE Santa Cruz. You are listening to Unquestionable here on KZSE Santa Cruz. One quick announcement. The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation of America, CCFA, is a nonprofit volunteer-driven organization whose mission is to cure Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis and to improve the quality of life of those affected by these diseases. Take Steps is an event created by the CCFA to raise funds and awareness of Crohn's disease. This community walk is filled with live music, food, kids entertainment, and updates on research. To register for a walk or for more information, visit cctakesteps.org. You are listening to Unquestionable here with myself, Dan Wu, who is in turn here with Brent Adams of the Warming Center. And before we went to break, we were exploring the stigma that comes along and kind of sticks with people for being homeless, and a lot of people that are not homeless anymore kind of don't want to talk about that afterwards, because people start asking, why were you homeless? What did you do to become homeless? And as someone who grew up here, and I'm sure people that grow up anywhere else, they do see homeless people that are their age, and they know that that person made some horrible mistakes. And sometimes I think that people are really awful, and sometimes they become homeless because they're really awful and no one wants to let them sleep on their couch. But there are a lot of other reasons that people become homeless without really doing anything awful or making any glaring mistakes in their life. Sometimes housing becomes too expensive and they lose their job at the same time, and they don't have family in the area. In fact, when I was preparing for this show this week, one line kept going through my head of a governing board member at this station. He was moving back to Sacramento after graduation a couple months ago, and to mostly help out his mom, who's one of the few relatives they have in the area. She's from the Philippines, I believe. And when I asked, why they wouldn't move here ever, or why he was moving back so quickly, partly it was to help out his mom, and partly it's that he said, totally unprompted, that he feels Santa Cruz is kind of a cold place, and that they throw out their weak and their young, sort of, was the way that he described it. And I was talking with Ryan Coonerty last week, county board supervisor of Santa Cruz County, former mayor, former city council member, about the hard truth that is there a maximum number of people who can reasonably live here without paving over the entire area that we live here to enjoy? And what do you think about the assessment by a UCSC student who just moved away, Brent, that Santa Cruz is kind of a cold-hearted place in the way that we treat people going through a hard time, or people that continually have a hard time for whatever reason?
Well, Santa Cruz was probably the tip of the spear on that. It's actually Western modern civilization. Doesn't hold value in people who are not carrying their own weight. In the United States, we have an ethic that you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. If you're not carrying your own weight, you got to move out of your place, move to another town that you can afford. There's little compassion any step of the way along, from housing into So Santa Cruz used to be sort of a barista, bedheaded, sleep on each other's couch type. In the 90s, it had this sort of aesthetic. That's long gone. Now it's very difficult to afford rent here. The rents aren't equal to what you need to afford rent. So students who have backup money coming with them, or people who are working over the hill, or people who are in the tech industry is really taking off in Santa Cruz right now. So yeah, in it's our economic system, it's our political system, and it's also sort of a story that we tell ourselves, that's why we're trying to, so that with our work, we're trying to tell ourselves a new story, that in Santa Cruz, everybody who lives here, inside or outside, is our community. Some of them are here, 5% of them are going to be here for 30 days or less. And we tell ourselves a weird story in Santa Cruz, like they do in Santa Barbara, in Berkeley, in Arcata. There are 40 cities on the West Coast that all pretend that people want to be there so bad because of the services. This is complete, I don't know if I can say complete bullshit.
No, you can't.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, gosh. Shoot.
Yeah, you can't say that.
No, it's not on the list up there.
Hold on. As a non-commercial educational radio station, KZSE supports free expression of ideas for the most part. Please be aware that the opinions expressed are those of the speakers or... As a non-commercial educational radio station, KZSE supports free expression of ideas. Please be aware that the opinions expressed are those of the speakers or artists only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the UC Region's KZSE staff, management, or underwriters. We welcome your feedback on our programming. Please direct your comments to the Program Review Committee at 831-459-4726 or by email at prc@kzse.org. And that was pretty funny that I actually had my mic down for sound quality just so I didn't have the air while you were talking. I have not forgotten to turn on my mic in a while. That was a little disorienting. But you said that it is a lie that people tell themselves in these very appealing, for me, there are some people I talk to that really dislike California, so they wouldn't want to live in any of those places. But for me, those are very appealing places you just mentioned, Santa Barbara, Arcata, for different reasons, Santa Cruz. And that we tell ourselves a lie that people come there to be homeless because of the services and that they're just dying to be homeless in those areas. Go ahead.
They're coming here. Everyone's coming to the West Coast. If you look at the temperatures recently, you'll want to be on the coast rather than be in Fresno and Stockton, Sacramento. We'd all come to the coast if we're sleeping outside. But if you go to Stockton, Sacramento, and Fresno, those are places where people are going for services because they're providing way better services for everybody. They have homeless services centers that are truly serving and welcoming people. We don't have a homeless services center in Santa Cruz. We have something called that, but you can't go there and have all your needs met, all your basic needs met. We last year at the City Council's Homelessness Coordinating Committee, they had 20 recommendations, and they said that we have a very poor rate in terms of services in relation to our population. And
I'm going to get in right here on that note and take this call. Hello, you're on Unquestionable with on KZSC Santa Cruz.
Hi. Yes, I'm a citizen here in Santa Cruz. And I am very concerned for the homeless people. And I also had come to that conclusion that I believe homeless people might be heading towards California because the weather is nicer and they have a better chance of surviving. With that being said, it seems like a federal government problem. Like the state of California should not have to take all the costs of helping American citizens who are homeless and heading to the part of America that is more easy to live in, and also the city as well that they live in, or the town. I think this is everyone, all citizens of the United States who can manage to pay their taxes, should help out California or places that have high amounts of people who are looking for a place to live and survive with dignity.
I do have a question on that basis, just on the most bare economic terms, is that California ships a lot more money to other places than we get from other states, simply because our economy is a lot larger than a lot of other states. How would you ask, say, Mississippi, which is already the poorest state in the nation, to help out California? I mean this in the sincerest way. Like, when you look at those numbers, how would you ask for it from certain states, or you're saying from the entire nation?
I'm saying as a federal, I guess that would be the entire nation. I think it's interesting that just because California makes more money somehow than the other states, that we have to give our money away to other places when we have so many problems here in California with drought, we also make a lot of the food for people of the United States as well. And yet when it came to farmers getting subsidies for more water allotments and things like that, everything was so hard for the farmers to do so. And it seemed like, the larger corporation farmers are the only ones that are really getting to move ahead, and it's pushing out the little farmers who are also equally important. But that is a very interesting thing I heard on the radio, how California gives a lot of money out. And then now we're having these fires where, we need a lot of help. We should just create new ways of fighting fires instead of using the old ways as well.
Okay.
So, how we can get on all kinds of great subjects, but
do you have
I do feel the federal government owes it to all places where homeless people are accumulating to look for a home, to look for a job, or just to look to survive, because sometimes people are just too mentally ill or beat down to even live what might be considered a normal life for a while. They need new training. They need, like you said, with dignity. I totally support that.
Awesome. So thank you so much for your call. I'm going to let Brent take this with you off the air, but thank you so much for the call.
Sure. You're
awesome.
welcome.
And Brent, you got any thoughts on that call?
Yeah.
Maybe on the more homelessness side. Not a problem with anything else she said, but just to keep rambling people like me and you on topic.
I actually completely agree with what she's saying. Systems orientation. All of our problems in the country, especially with the poverty, it's ludicrous to expect Santa Cruz and by
or
extension,
San Francisco
but
or any of the
what
other
you see
places.
is almost by this very unintentional or maybe intentional design that every single city and every city has to come up with its own plan. And imagine the profound redundancy city to city of all the nonprofits trying to deal with these sort of things, bureaucracies in each city. Then city to city, the profound redundancy there. So the federal government does have a responsibility, and it's through the HUD department, Housing and Urban Development. Each community has something called the COC district. That's a continuum of care through which the federal government pours money into problems of poverty, including homelessness. And that's happening already, except for the fact that several years ago, 10, 15 years ago, they changed the entire paradigm from funding shelters to removing money for shelters, and then starting this housing first concept that we've seen has been a complete catastrophe on the West Coast because there is no available housing. So they closed shelters. People were forced out onto the street with the promise of new housing, and the federal government funded all these organizations like they continue to do. But where does that money go? Very few pennies reach the street of homelessness. What we want to see is a new awareness that every person, she says the word citizen, I say every person within the bounds of America is the responsibility of the government in terms of, like, if we are this great nation, it's a responsibility that we at least provide basic dignifying conditions that people don't have to sleep in a culvert under a highway overpass, well, like people are doing by the millions right now. And then so the money would flow from the federal government into the states, into the counties and the cities. But what we're seeing is the federal government is expecting each city to make it up as it goes along. There is a large governmental thing, and what we're going to see is this large amount of funding coming in through the city. I mean, from the state into the city. That's largely federal money, and we like for housing coming up. She makes a really good point, though. Santa Cruz and California shouldn't have to foot the bill, but if we have people sleeping in doorways in Santa Cruz, is it not our responsibility to make sure that we can provide something a little bit better? Because it's on us as a community that people are dying outside.
And I guess switching gears here pretty abruptly is the comment towards Measure H, because I do want to give that some time here. I had a more inflammatory follow-up to what you just said, which would have been great to get into, but we only have 14 minutes left here on Unquestionable here on KZSE Santa Cruz. You can call in at 831-459-4036. But I do want to switch gears real quick to Measure H. And I want to give you, let's say, 1 minute to give your take on it, and minute and a half to give your take on it and what you think is the most important things to people know about it.
I'm not well read on Measure H. I do like large bond issues. I know the city is planning a huge building spree, as you know, along Front Street and between Front and Pacific. There are large developments planned. In the near future, 10 years or so, there's going to be some mega complexes that is going to massively increase the availability of housing. And we need to make sure that a lot of that is earmarked for lower income people who are doing the services. And there's a large, huge federal grant, and then this is a bond issue initiative. I support them at the heart of it, at the base of it, but I still think we don't have very good design quality in the sense that why are we not talking about basic needs for people who sleep outside? So I'll always, since I'm a nonprofit creator and director and builder of programs that meet basic needs, I'll always drive my voice towards that. So while we're doing that, how are we going to make sure that every citizen, quote unquote citizen in our county has available basic needs. If we're going to be, so what we'll see is huge developments. And I really want to see that. They say we're built out because of the green belt, but if you look at countywide, we're definitely not built out. There's lots of space. There's a racket going on. It's the large development companies and government officials. City of Santa Cruz is not really a social services organization. It's a corporation providing basic services for your community. It actually legally doesn't have to care about humans whatsoever. In fact, humans muck up the system of the city government at corporation. It's the county that's more responsible. So, when we talk to people like Ryan Coonerty, it's really important to realize that they do the human services and the city doesn't.
Okay. No, that's fine.
I know I throw ideas all over, but it's confusing.
Yeah, no, these issues definitely can spawn conversations in a zillion different directions. And
do you want to talk about proposition?
I'm not on its face, and the amount of people that spoke in support of it at that county board of supervisors meeting that I went to, and the different groups, like seeing yourself up there,
right,
and then seeing some contractors and seeing some real estate people against it and some people for it.
Oh, yeah.
But even seeing any real estate agent for something that you also spoke vaguely in favor of putting on the ballot, it's going to be on the ballot. They didn't approve the bill to the bond measure to go into action. It has to pass by 2/3 in November. But to see contractors and you
right
up there talking about it, and the Monterey Bay MPEG talking about it, Monterey Bay Partnership of Businesses and all that, was very interesting. We got another call coming in, though. So let's let a listener here get their word in on Unquestionable. Hello.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having the show, and thanks for having Brent Adams on to speak about these issues, because they're certainly, I think, are very important local issues, and actually important national issues, but on the local front. And I think Brent also, I think he might have mentioned, but he's did a documentary film kind of going around to, I think, homeless situations in various cities around the West Coast, and made a documentary film. And I can't remember if that's available, if there might be any upcoming screening of that.
Would you like to plug availability of your film?
Very quickly. So that's an ongoing project. It came down to what is the most integrous thing for me to be doing with my time. I actually set a lot of people up with a fund me, and a lot of people donated up to $5,000 to help empower me going to those 40 cities where I conducted 1,000 interviews, 400 on video, and I looked for a bunch of different programs. Came into Santa Cruz, started working on the Coalition on Homelessness, and then as we're following some stories locally, what became immediately necessary clearly was storage for people who sleep outside. I'm wearing a dozen hats, running a nonprofit, running some programs, trying to also produce a documentary. I thought I would be spending my summer editing the thing, and now we had the opportunity to start the storage program, and now unbelievably, we're moving the storage program that's been in a city parking lot in a transportable facility, a large truck, with 100 plastic bins, into now finally a fixed location. So that's a small miracle that we're now moving our office. And so when we talk about the documentary, it's ongoing. I'm actually following the story of West Coast homelessness, Housing First, Smart Path to Homelessness, all the things that we're doing locally. Last winter's camp in San Lorenzo Park, the new camp, what the city's doing together, and also alongside it, my work with the storage program and warming center.
Awesome. That's great. I think that all is just such wonderful work, and I really appreciate Brent for doing that, because I do think there's so much that we can learn, our city can learn from looking at not just the neighboring cities, but a broader picture of what is possible. And I think so often we reinvent the wheel, or we perpetuate history repeating itself in not good ways, because we aren't looking outside of our own selves or our own communities, at what else can be done and what can be done creatively or, with innovation and, just all the ways that it happens. I think Brent is very aware of it because he's done that, and that's really impressive. And I hope that the film gets to completion and Brent is able to find that time to do that, because I do think it's a really valuable tool for all of us to have.
You could find something online. It's called Out of Sight, Out of Mind movie. There's some stuff up on YouTube. Those are some of the things I shared with RealWorks last year. You probably saw that. I haven't actually edited much new, but I have 4 terabytes of video data. So there's a lot of work.
Thank you so much for the call. And,
thank you very much. Thanks for having the show.
Awesome. And the number is 831-459-4036. We have about 6 minutes left, so we can sneak in a quick call here or there. But Measure H, you were talking about the funding for homelessness in that bill. It's about $140 million that they estimate they'll raise, because even if they put it into action, those numbers can change depending on various factors. But it was about 20 to 30 million, I think, over a 30-year period for homelessness services.
21 or something like that.
Yeah, 21. Yeah, 21. And it was between 20 and 30. So what do you feel about that amount of money, given the fact that you also purport that more money doesn't equal better solutions?
Yeah. From 2000 to 2013, we had something called the 10-year plan to end homelessness. As you know, when 2013 came around, they didn't have homelessness ended. That was something that they legally have to do because of continuum of care. No. And so the next 10-year plan, that's the one that we live under now. It's called the all-in plan, and we really have to be all in for it to work, which means we're going to open up our spare bedrooms for people to sleep in and things like that. It actually is, to my mind, not that very well designed. Billions have poured into Santa Cruz, and they will continue. It doesn't matter how much money if it's not designed well. We know that the new iteration of the homeless shelter is called the Navigation Center. We still haven't had that really well defined for us, and yet we're talking about it like it's we're just going to throw endless amounts into that. It's all good for me, but I just want to, while that's all happening and that steam train's rolling down the track, we want to make sure that there are other, that we can assure with some basic programs that are very well designed that the basic needs are being met too. So we don't talk about money, we just talk about community awareness, better design. We want to talk about doing more with less, not doing nothing with everything.
So talking about doing more with your means or living in your means, there was an article I read while preparing for this that it was on Indie Media. And essentially you were being attacked from another side of the homelessness activist community. It's a 2016 article that's still up there where you were verbatim called a poverty pimp.
Oh, yeah.
And what would you say to people that would have that point of view? And how do you currently, as you said, housing market, you jumped through jobs when you were younger. How do you currently support yourself? And what do you say to the I wouldn't say farther left, that's a weird way of saying it, but other wings of the homelessness activist community that have serious problems with the way you approach your work?
That's the best you got. Come on. No, I'm just joking. Poverty pimp, it's a great term that's out there that we all have to measure ourselves, and how that's a term that I had been using in the past. Now, a nonprofit like ours, nobody would ever look at.
Are you suing them for royalties?
No, nobody would ever consider me a poverty pimp because I don't draw. I have the ability through our board to draw a very small salary. I draw half of that. I personally live in a transportable housing device myself. It's an RV. I live as low as possible so we can achieve some lift with some of these things that we really want to create. Yes, there are poverty pimps. Those are the mega nonprofits that we know about. I will not list them. We've seen gross waste and even theft within them. Those are the true poverty pimps. Think mega nonprofits that serve low-income housing, low-income populations. Yes, there's I'll speak very quickly to the population in Santa Cruz, the protest activists. Oh, yeah. Okay, 1 minute. we've just decided to section ourselves off. Yes, there's things to protest the sleeping ban, but we just decided to stop doing that. What's true are the unmet needs. Now, we have a fundraiser coming up for the day and night storage program on September 14th. We have dinner theater at 7 o'clock at the 418 Project. Please go to Eventbrite. It's called Dinner Theater Ambiance. That directly funds the storage program itself. We're doing a whole bunch of things, and I take care of myself and my basic needs just enough so I can really make sure that we're building a nonprofit and programs that are sustainable. At some point, it'll be appropriate for me to draw a living wage, but I'm drawing far less than that, even a third of that currently.
All right. And
hopefully that can plug some of the website, the hotline
yes,
number.
And I'm going to kind of end the show in the next minute here. But yes, as Homebrew, friends of mine, play our other theme music, we would love it if you got into a little bit of ways that people can get a hold of you.
Thanks. Warming Center Program at Gmail. warmingcenterprogram.com has a lot of information about what we're up to. The hotline, 831-234-9848. There's a lot of Facebook pages you can find. Homeless Outside in Santa Cruz Coalition on Homelessness. We're doing a bunch. Become more aware of what we're up to because it's transformative. We're going to raise the floor of experience for every person sleeping outside. Thank you so much, Dan Wu.
Thank you so much, Brent, for being in. I'm going to leave you with a little bit of Ducky singing from Homebrew. This is the track Mirrors. Thank you so much to them. They're available on Bandcamp and all kinds of places, local Santa Cruz musicians. And we'll get out of here and give DJ Lizard the studio. And I took 20 seconds of her show again. Have a great day. Unquestionable back next week with Santa Cruz hardcore promoter Malachi Green.
I am a skunk repelling everything I find, searching, not finding any shred of peace of mind. Is it courage to boldly admit to all I lack? Imagine phantom father is never coming back. Break all the mirrors, don't be afraid of bad news, 'cause it's the only kind we have here. Break all the mirrors, don't be afraid of bad luck, 'cause it's the only kind we have here. Are you better than me? 'Cause I'm no better than you. Are you better than me? 'Cause I'm no better, no better. I play my hand conservatively, 'cause a deck ain't in my favor. Yeah, palm the good ones for later. I don't have a plan, just a sleight of hand. You're a good man. You deserve a good woman. You're a good man. You deserve a good woman. What the hell are you doing with me? What the hell are you doing with me? Break all the mirrors, don't be afraid of bad luck, 'cause it's the only kind we have here. Break all the mirrors, don't be afraid of bad news, 'cause it's the only kind we have here.
All right, home.